everyone, Anna here, and today I'm going to do the new booktuber tag. This tag was created by a Brenda C 6 years ago, so I wanted to go ahead and credit her for the work that she did on this tag. Questions will also be listed in the description box, which was also hard for me to find, but for your convenience, they are in the description box and they are timestamped. So hey, I'm Anna, and let's get into it. Oh, pause. I also wanted to do this a little bit differently. So as part of my response to each of the tag questions, I'm sharing a bookish quote. I think the best thing about reading is finding a little nugget of truth sprinkled in the pages of a book. I thought that I would share some of my favorites as responses to these questions. So I hope you guys have fun on this little twist. Question 1. Why did you start this channel? Loneliness isn't the physical absence of other people, he said. It's a sense that you're not sharing anything that matters with anyone else. Lost connections. Joanne Hari. I started this channel because I wanted to share my interests of books and bookish things with someone out there without any restraint. I tend to be like, if I sense that the other person that I'm talking to gets bored with me talking about books, I'm like, okay, well, they're bored, so I won't talk about it anymore. But in watching and creating videos, I can just word vomit my affections for reading, and you could just X out if you don't want to listen. And that's great for both of us because I can say what I want to say without burdening you or forcing you and trapping you in my company, and you can exit out if you don't want to listen anymore, and I wouldn't know the difference. So it works out. It's a win-win. Question number 2. What are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? The older I get, the less impressed I become with originality. These days, I'm far more moved by authenticity. Authenticity has quiet resonance that never fails to stir me. Big magic, Elizabeth Gilbert. I don't know so much about unique or even fun, but I am brainstorming some unique ways to share the books that I love with you guys. I've watched a lot of Booktube in the recent couple months, and I've noticed that there are a lot of similarities between creators, and so I'm hoping that I can kind of find a groove or a video pattern that can be not unique necessarily, but just kind of more refreshing. If I can come up with something creative, that's part of the fun of having a YouTube channel and just playing around with editing styles and information delivery. So yes, that's it really. I don't know why I'm nervously giggling. There's only a camera in front of me, but social anxiety, you know. Question 3. What are you most excited for about this new channel? There's nothing as unstoppable as a freight train full of yeah, you're a badass, Jensen Chero. I just am excited about being excited. Question 4. Why do you love reading? We read books to find out who we are, what other people, real or imaginary, do and think and feel is an essential guide to our understanding of what we ourselves are and may become. Ursula K. Le Guin. I love reading different things for different reasons. I love getting swept away in a great fantasy or being kind of spooked out by something that is thrilling and mysterious. I love nonfiction as ways to learn about human behavior and learn more about myself. I love the feeling of getting to know different characters, the ambiance of different places that is so powerful in our brains. I just read this TED Talk. I just listened to this TED Talk about why reading is important. Hi, Editing Anna here. I have to re-explain this part because in the TED Talk, Why Reading Matters by Rita Carter, she explains that the same parts of our brain that are active while we read something that is happening to a character in a book are very similar or the same as the same areas that would light up or be active in our brains when we would do these things ourselves. Not to the same extent, otherwise we would like read something and act it out at the same time, but it's very similar. Question number 5. What book or series got you into reading? The earth is beautiful and bright and kindly, but that is not all. The earth is also terrible and dark and cruel. There are sharks in the sea, and there is cruelty in men's eyes. Ursula K. Le Guin, Tomes of Atuan. I quoted this because the Tales of the Earthsea trilogy by Ursula Le Guin was like my #1 go-to favorite when I was a very small middle grade reading child, and I wanted to quote that because I love finding, again, nuggets of truth in books that are just long lasting and evergreen. But I really can't point out a series or a book itself that got me into reading. I think as a young child, when I learned to read, I just fell in love with stories. And I remember as a kid sitting at the library on the floor in front of the Beverly Cleary, Judy Blume section of my library, and the librarian comes over to me and he's like, "Hey Anna, why don't you try the big kid chapter books," which is like young adult, you know? And he was kind of movie-esque. He hands me The Hobbit and he's like, "Why don't you try this? I think you'll like it." And that is where my love of fantasy began. He also took me over to the Greek mythology section of our library, and I fell in love with myth, fantasy, and legend, and I was never the same again. Number 6. What questions would you ask some of your favorite YouTubers? Sometimes Matilda longed for a friend. Someone like the kind, courageous people in her books. Matilda, Roald Dahl. I think I would ask them, can we be friends? Like, seriously, can we be friends? Will you subscribe and I'll subscribe to you and we can like chat about books? Yeah. And question 7. What challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be the hardest to overcome? Here's my hunch. Nobody's secure and nobody feels like she completely belongs. Those insecurities are just job hazards of being human. But some people dance anyway, and those people have more fun. Carry on warrior, Glennon Milton. I think putting yourself on the internet is a challenging thing. It's actually one of the activities that I'm doing to help combat my social anxieties. So I think being insecure about whether or not people like me, what do other people think of me, and really putting myself out there to be judged on the World Wide Web, I think is how you say it. Wow, I just worked a full shift at work and my brain is like, we're on overdrive now. We all want to be liked. We all want to belong to something. And I think showing, or at least for me, I want to show my truest, most authentic self as much as possible on this YouTube channel. Maybe people won't like me. And maybe people will think I'm annoying or don't have anything important to say, or they will just not like my crooked teeth or my dimple or something. And I have to be okay with that. And this is just practice for being around real people. Question 8. When did you start reading? So Matilda's strong young mind continued to grow, nurtured by the voices of all those authors who had sent their books out into the world like ships on the sea. These books gave Matilda a hope and comforting message. You are not alone. Roald Dahl, Matilda. I learned to read when I was like 5 years old. The first book that I remember being able to read was this Disney picture book. It was Beauty and the Beast, and it had like a condensed version of the story. Of course, it was like 20 pages. All of the little objects on the pictures were labeled. So if there was a sheep, it would be labeled sheep. If there was a bucket, it'd be labeled bucket. There's a ribbon in Belle's hair, it would be labeled ribbon. And I remember learning how to read that. I think my sister and my mom kind of tag teamed me learning how to read because I learned how to read prior to kindergarten. After that, it was like the world of reading was my oyster. Where do you read? She traveled all over the world while sitting in a little room in an English village. Matilda, Roald Dahl. As you can tell, I really love the book Matilda. I really resonated with Matilda as a person who kind of felt like an alien in her own family. But I read here. Most of the time I read right here. Usually it's before bed or right early in the morning. I also read on my walks. Question 10. What kind of books do you like to read? If one cannot enjoy reading a book over and over again, there's no use in reading it at all. Oscar Wilde. I like to find books that I can reread over and over again, regardless of genre. I adventure mostly into middle grade, young adult fantasy, nonfiction self-help, memoirs, alternative spirituality. Yeah, those kind of things are what I normally dive into. Although with Booktube, I will say that I am getting more into different genres. I want to expand myself a little bit. I identify as a highly sensitive person, or as an HSP, and so reading very scary things, very violent things, very like tear-jerking, torturous things is really hard for me. I I'm a crybaby. Everybody in my family will tell you I'm a crybaby. I'm very sensitive. So those types of things are really hard for me, especially like non-consensual intimacy. That is really hard for me too. Like I feel repulsed, like nearly vomiting when stuff like that happens in any sort of media. But I am trying to toughen up a little bit because all of that's life. That happens to people. Sometimes life isn't fair and it's not right. And by facing the terrible things that happen to us in our own lives and in our society, we can learn. Question the things that you believe so that you can truly know what you believe and that you can truly question and change the things that aren't as true as you once thought. Anyways, Olive and I wish you a very, very happy week, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thank you for the kisses.